My father was a pacifist, and he refused to join the army. And at that time, under those circumstances, that was high treason. And he also had to flee, which he did. And ended up going via the Czech Republic and Zurich in Switzerland to the Lake District in England. And then eventually up to Scotland and joined the group that had already formed the beginnings of Camp Hill. There were 16 people who lived in this house and laid the foundation and the seeds of what became known as the Camp Hill movement.
Karl Koenig said to my father and my mother, "There's a call from America, you and your family, you go and fulfill that need." He didn't have big exposure to America before saying, yes, we're going to do this. But I think because of his interest in other people and his ability to serve as a mentor and guide to other people, which he had already practiced in Scotland and England, and that he felt he was up to the challenge of the new world. And somehow he found his way into the hearts of people quite readily, parents and officials and so forth. One of the comments that a parent made to me many years ago when his daughter was accepted to Beaver Run and he got to know my dad as well as my mom, he said that Carlo, my father, was the most charismatic man he'd ever met.
I think back and think, my goodness, what a tremendous amount of courage and what a tremendous commitment to leave everything behind. And most of these people came from well-to-do families, and they lost everything. And to try to live together, but they had this commitment around and with Dr. Koenig, and then to live a shared life with these people who themselves were really outcasts at the time. But as many of these things are, it's precisely the challenges and that are the greatest learning moments. It's a huge opportunity, this personal transformation in the daily rubbing and the difficulties and the differences that then don't become divisive but become, connectors. And that, I think, was something that I think generated increasingly respect, admiration, interest, and then commitment from a growing number of people, including parents, because there was nothing like that available at the time.
How did we begin to understand the passion and depth of interest of our parents' commitment to Camp Hill movement? As a child, you're not so conscious of that. You just live your life. So we played, we ate, we were outdoors, we sang songs. But part of our life was very much integrated into the lives of the whole community. There were festivals, there were plays, there were different kinds of celebrations.
So, altogether, a happy, fulfilled, enriched, adventurous childhood. We could play all day, go out in the woods in the morning, come back in the evening, surrounded by people of all ages and all nationalities. That was just, daily bread. It wasn't anything that seemed unusual or peculiar or anything like that. That was simply what we knew.
But as we grew older, we began to become a little bit clear of how deeply connected my mother and my father were to not only Camp Hill movement as it was at the time, but building it up.
That interested me, and like many seedlings, it needs, sunlight and warmth and water. It needs ingredients to grow. And those ingredients were there, certainly encouraged by my parents.
I think as I got older and into adulthood, I could say that some of the values around community life, caring for those who have greater needs, being conscious about the world, connecting ourselves to the world, being of service, those were all really important values to them that they might frame or phrase in different wording, but they all became really essential to me over the rest of my life.
These were moments of little droplets of self-knowledge that I gained through this direct engagement in the day-to-day rhythmic life of community. And it brought me an enormous amount, taught me an enormous amount. And, I could connect that with the idealism and also with the very pragmatic meditative principles and personal development principles in anthroposophy. And that's what held me in Camp Hill. And the more I dove in, the more it inspired me, frankly.
If you would count how many people have been touched by Camp Hill that have passed through for trainings, have lived in a household for a year, have done an internship, have been strong, steady coworkers for many, many years, and then moved on to do that. Parents, siblings, friends, donor. If you would count that number of people that have been touched by something about Camp Hill's alchemy, that number is huge. It's way bigger than the number of people who are directly, if you like, served in Camp Hill. And I think the need for communal, intensive, life-changing experiences is greater than ever. And one of the great things about Camp Hill is that it put you through your paces. And you thought it was a pain, or you didn't like it, or you didn't have enough free time or anything like that. But when you left 2 or 3 years later, you found this as one of the most formative experiences of your life. And I think those kinds of formative experiences continue to be absolutely essential for to make humankind more human.
So here we go.
I think Camp Hill has touched many people's lives in many, many different ways. And if it provides inspiration, if it can provide some consolidation, some orientation, a sense of safety, a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, a sense of community, a sense of depth and spiritual solidarity, in whatever way it does to the thousands and thousands of people who come through Camp Hill, been touched by Camp Hill, it serves a purpose in the world. What is astonishing to me, and I think wonderful for Camp Hill, is precisely the differences of the places. And you see this in the Camp Hill movement worldwide. You see big, you see small, you see urban, suburban, countrified. You see different populations being served in different ways with different programs. The spectrum is huge, actually, of what constitutes Camp Hill. So one can ask oneself, well, what's the red thread? What's the commonality? And that really has to do ultimately with spiritual substance, with striving, with certain human values, with values of understanding ourselves as human beings and what is behind us as human beings. It's where people live, where people interact, where people engage, where people inspire, where people celebrate, where people learn. And cultural entities, by their very nature, will require financial support. And a cultural entity that represents the scope and the spectrum, the vastness of what Camp Hill is practically engaged in is very, very rare. So I can hardly think of a more worthy entity to provide ongoing financial support than the Camp Hill movement in North America.